In a smoky London club in 1966, the crowd went silent. Then erupted as Ginger Baker unleashed a storm of drums that shook the walls. His hands blurred, his eyes burned, and for a few electrifying moments, he wasn't a man, but a force of nature. They called him the world's first rock star drummer. Wild, brilliant, untamable. But behind the madness was a darker rhythm, heroin, rage, and a heart slowly collapsing under the weight of genius. He fought wars on every front. Against addiction, against fame, against himself. Friends feared him, lovers left him, and bandmates like Jack Bruce swore never to play with him again. Yet through the wreckage, Baker kept beating the drums. Louder, faster, angrier. As if trying to drown out his own demons. This is the untold truth of Ginger Baker. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Long before the roaring crowds and the chaos of Cream, Peter Edward Ginger Baker was just a lonely boy wandering through the rubble of post-war South London. The year was 1943 when he was born, into a country that still smelled of smoke and loss. His father, a bricklayer turned soldier, went off to fight in the Second World War and never came home. Ginger was barely 4 when the telegram arrived. A small piece of paper that shattered his childhood forever. From that day on, the boy grew up in a house filled with silence and survival, but not warmth. His mother worked hard, but affection was scarce. Grief had turned her heart to stone. Ginger's earliest memories weren't of laughter, but of walls shaking under the sounds of air raids, of a father-shaped absence no one could fill. At school, he fought everyone. Teachers, students, even himself. When other kids played football, Ginger rode his bike at dangerous speeds through traffic, testing fate, almost begging to feel alive. "If you don't crash, you're not trying," he'd say later. Risk was his language. Pain was his grammar. By the time he reached his teens, music became the only thing that made sense. The drums spoke to him. Raw, violent, free. He practiced on tin cans and tabletops, beating out anger instead of words. When he finally met jazz drummer Phil Seaman, it felt like destiny. Seaman was everything Ginger wanted to be. Wild, brilliant, untouchable. But Seaman also carried a curse, heroin. Baker looked at him and saw both salvation and damnation. Critics later accused Seaman of introducing Ginger to the drug, but Baker always denied it. "I was using before I met him," he snapped in one interview, as if addiction had been waiting for him all along. The streets of South London were his training ground and his battlefield. Poverty hardened him. Betrayal sharpened him. He learned early that trust was a luxury and love was temporary. When he played, he didn't just keep rhythm. He attacked it. Every drum hit sounded like a punch thrown at the ghosts of his past. His temper became legend even before fame arrived. One bandmate remembered, he didn't just lose control. He enjoyed it. It wasn't arrogance, not really. It was fear disguised as fury. Baker couldn't stand authority. He saw every rule as another attempt to cage him. Perhaps that's why he drummed the way he did. Ferocious, unpredictable, defiant. His entire life was one long refusal to be contained. There was, however, a softer side that almost no one saw. Between gigs, he'd write letters to his late father, asking if he was proud. "I'm still fighting," one letter read, "but I don't know what for." That private vulnerability never made it to the stage. The world only saw the chaos. The shattered drumsticks, the screaming fits, the fire in his eyes. Inside, though, was a boy who never stopped hearing the silence left by a father's death. When jazz turned to rock and Baker found himself in London's new underground scene, that wounded energy became his superpower. He played with desperation, as if every song were a confession, every performance a way to bury his pain. People said he was ahead of his time. And maybe he was. But the truth is simpler and darker. Ginger Baker wasn't playing to impress the world. He was drumming to stay alive. Even in the earliest photos of him. Lanky, flame-haired, cigarette dangling. There's a tension in his eyes, something between genius and madness. Those who knew him said he could be charming one moment and terrifying the next. It was as if two people lived inside him, the orphan still searching for his father, and the man who refused to need anyone ever again. By his early 20s, that inner split had become his identity. He was no longer just a drummer. He was a myth in motion. A product of war, loss, and endless rebellion. The boy from South London, who learned rhythm before love had found his stage. But he was still drumming for the same reason he always had, to fill the silence left behind. And in that silence, the tragedy was already waiting. By 1966, London was boiling with revolution. A storm of sound, smoke, and youth hungry for something new. In the middle of it all stood Ginger Baker, the drummer who could make thunder sound human. He wasn't simply keeping time, he was rewriting it. His precision was mathematical, his fury almost spiritual. When he joined forces with Eric Clapton and Jack Bruce to form Cream, the trio became an explosion no one could contain. Baker's drums weren't background noise. They were prophecy. Within months, Cream's sound had taken over Britain, then America. Songs like Sunshine of Your Love and White Room turned radio waves into fire. On stage, Baker was a spectacle of sweat and chaos. Shirtless, possessed, a blur behind the toms. He could play a 15-minute solo that left audiences hypnotized and his own body nearly destroyed. Each performance looked like a battle between man and instrument, and Baker almost always won. Almost. The world saw power, mastery, and charisma. What they didn't see were the bloody hands, the panic attacks, the nights he collapsed backstage from exhaustion. Baker's genius demanded sacrifice, and it collected a heavy price. He was touring non-stop, sleeping in bursts, and living on a cocktail of adrenaline, anger, and heroin. "I didn't need sleep," he once said. "I had the drums." Down with time. Behind the scenes, the trio was already fracturing. Baker's relationship with Jack Bruce, once creative lightning, had turned venomous. On stage, they smiled. Off stage, they screamed. Baker accused Bruce of turning up his bass to drown the drums. Bruce accused Baker of sabotage. They threatened each other with knives, fought in dressing rooms, and once nearly came to blows mid-song. Clapton stood between them, the reluctant peacekeeper, while the band that changed rock history quietly bled itself dry. Still, Baker pushed harder. He wanted to be remembered not as a rock drummer, but as an artist. His obsession with jazz rhythms, African polyrhythms, and technical perfection became a prison of its own. He hated being lumped in with rock's druggy circus. Yet he couldn't escape it. The more famous he became, the more he despised fame itself. Money flooded in. So did the chaos. He bought luxury cars, crashed them, replaced them, then drove them again as if speed could erase anxiety. He moved from mansion to mansion, but none felt like home. When Cream disbanded in 1968, at the height of their success, Baker said it felt like escaping a war zone. But wars don't end when you carry them inside you. He launched Blind Faith with Clapton and Steve Winwood, hoping for a cleaner start. The band's single album was praised, but the same old ghosts returned. Control, ego, addiction. During the American tour, Baker would disappear for hours, return shaking, eyes burning. Fans thought it was exhaustion. It was withdrawal. Then came the boldest move of his life. Africa. He packed up his drums, left England behind, and drove thousands of miles across the Sahara Desert to Nigeria. No security, no map, just Ginger Baker and his obsession with rhythm. Locals thought he was insane. Maybe he was. But for a time, Lagos became his rebirth. He built a recording studio. The legendary ARC, African Recording Company, where he worked with Fela Kuti, the father of Afrobeat. Their sessions were wild collisions of jazz, tribal rhythm, and rebellion. Fela was the only one who understood what I was trying to do, Baker said. In those dusty Lagos nights, Baker seemed free. He kicked heroin, played polo, and spoke of finding peace through African drumming. Yet even paradise couldn't silence his chaos for long. The studio burned through money faster than it earned it, equipment failed, and local corruption strangled the dream. When Baker returned to England, broke and disillusioned, the press mocked him. The mad drummer lost in Africa. But what he'd created there, the fusion of rock, jazz, and African rhythm, would later inspire generations of musicians. The cost, however, was brutal. Baker's health began to crack. The years of relentless drumming had shredded his spine and wrecked his lungs. Doctors warned him of degenerative osteoarthritis and early signs of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, from chain smoking. "If I stop playing, I die," he told them. But every concert pushed him closer to that prophecy. Still, he refused to slow down. The 1,970 seconds blurred into a carousel of new bands. Air Force, Hawkwind, Masters of Reality. Each one burning out faster than the last. The music was brilliant, but Baker's temper and addictions made him impossible to keep. Musicians admired him from a distance. Few could survive working with him. He'd become a paradox. Worshipped by drummers, feared by everyone else. His technique was pure art. African syncopation meets British aggression. Yet his life was a constant collapse. In one interview, he said with a bitter grin, "People think I'm angry. They're wrong. I'm furious." In the Strassley Arda and Prezi's in 7 days, without his nut, that fury was his engine. Without it, he didn't know who he was. Even when playing for small crowds in later years, Baker attacked the drums with the same violence he once reserved for sold-out arenas. His hands bled, his body shook, but he refused to stop. Fame had come and gone, fortunes had vanished, friends had died, but the rhythm, the endless pounding rhythm, never left him. For Ginger Baker, greatness was never a blessing. It was a contract written in blood and sweat, a trade of peace for immortality. He'd achieved everything the world could offer, wealth, fame, influence. And yet, standing behind his drums, drenched in sweat, veins trembling, he still looked like the same haunted boy from South London, trying to beat time itself into submission. He had climbed the mountain that killed most men, and he had done it with nothing left to lose. If Ginger Baker's music was chaos in motion, then his love life was the echo that never stopped ringing. For all his fire on stage, his heart seemed to ignite just as violently off it, and burn everything in its path. He once said, half-jokingly, "I fall in love like I crash cars." Suddenly, and with too much speed, that line became prophecy. His first wife, Elizabeth Liz Finch, met him long before the fame, when he was just a thin, sharp-eyed jazz drummer trying to pay rent. She saw the brilliance, but also the danger. Their early years were a blur of smoky bars, borrowed drum kits, and endless promises that things would get better. Then Cream exploded, and so did Ginger. Fame magnified his temper, his addictions, and his paranoia. What used to be arguments about money turned into full-scale wars that rattled the walls of their London home. Liz once told a friend, "You never knew which Ginger would walk through the door. The gentle genius or the man who wanted to destroy the world." And I think by the early 1970s, the marriage collapsed under the weight of touring, drugs, and infidelity. Baker had affairs with models, journalists, and musicians, not out of romance, but as distractions from his own restlessness. He later admitted, "I was never faithful to anyone, not even to myself." When Liz finally left, she took their children with her. The silence that followed was unbearable. Baker's rage turned inward, and his drum solos grew longer, darker, more violent. Some nights, it sounded like he was punishing the drums for every mistake he'd ever made. He remarried in the 1982nd. This time to Sarah, a brief, fiery union that burned out almost as soon as it began. Friends said he was charming for 10 minutes, impossible for 10 months. The pattern repeated: love, jealousy, control, explosion. He could adore someone one day and accuse them of betrayal the next. His life was a cycle of devotion and destruction, spinning faster than even his most manic drum rolls. In the 1990 seconds, during a rare attempt to find peace, he moved to Colorado and married Karen Lukes, a local woman who believed she could ground him. For a while, she did. He played polo, stayed clean, and even laughed again. But Ginger Baker was never built for calm. The smallest frustrations, a bill, a headline, a sound he didn't like, could send him spiraling. Karen once recalled a night when he smashed an entire set of drums because a single cymbal didn't sound right. She left soon after. Then came the relationship that stunned everyone. Kudzai Machokoto, a Zimbabwean woman nearly 4 decades younger than him. They met in South Africa, where Baker had moved to escape taxes and the ghosts of England. He called her the only woman who could handle me, but even that union was marked by storms. Friends accused her of exploiting him. Tabloids painted her as a gold digger. But those close to Baker knew the truth was more complex. He was old, ill, and terrified of dying alone. Kudzai gave him companionship, structure, and a reason to keep living. Yet even in his 70s, the old fire never died. He'd yell at reporters, curse at interviewers, and insist, "I'm not a nice man, but I'm honest." Isn't it doubt? The documentary Beware of Mr. Baker captured their twisted domestic reality with brutal honesty. In one infamous scene, Baker strikes the director, J. Bulger, across the nose with his metal cane. An eruption so sudden, it stunned even those used to his temper. The act became symbolic. Baker's violence wasn't random, it was ritual. Every time someone tried to capture or control him, he lashed out. Whether it was a filmmaker, a wife, or fate itself, he refused to be anyone's possession. But beneath the rage, there was tragedy. Baker's relationships weren't driven by cruelty alone. They were born from fear. The same fear that had followed him since his father's death. He longed for love, but didn't trust it. He chased peace, but didn't believe he deserved it. Every argument, every slammed door, every woman who walked away. They were chapters in the same unfinished story. A man who could conquer rhythm but not loneliness. The cruelest moment came years later when he received a phone call from his old rival, Jack Bruce, the bassist he'd both loved and hated for decades. Bruce was dying. The two had shared the most combustible partnership in rock history. A bond built on music and mutual destruction. Baker answered, expecting reconciliation. Instead, he got Bruce's final words. "I'm dying, Ginger, you bastard." Then the line went dead. It was one last punch from fate. The sound of unfinished business echoing into eternity. After that call, something in Baker went quiet. He still played, still cursed, still fought with journalists and doctors, but the rage no longer had an enemy. It just hovered in the air, heavy and unsatisfied. His fourth marriage deteriorated as his health collapsed. Even then, he refused to admit regret. "Love," he once said in a rare interview, "I've had enough of it. It never ends well for me." We crate. Yet, in his final years, there were small flickers of softness. Moments caught between storms. He'd talk about horses, about his kids, about Africa. Sometimes, he'd smile at Kudzai and say, "I don't know why you're still here, but I'm glad you are." For a man who'd spent his whole life destroying what he loved, that was as close to redemption as he would ever come. Ginger Baker's life wasn't a love story. It was a war story disguised as one. Every woman who entered it became both muse and casualty. But even in heartbreak, there was something hauntingly human about him. A man so desperate to be free that he ended up trapped inside himself. And in that cage, the echoes of his own drums kept beating. Fierce, lonely, eternal. The legend of Ginger Baker ended not with applause, but with the slow ticking of medical machines in a hospital room. The man who once made stadiums tremble now struggled to breathe. His lungs, scorched from decades of chain smoking, betrayed him. His back, ruined by years behind the drums, could no longer support even his fragile frame. The diagnosis was brutal. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, degenerative osteoarthritis, and later, heart failure. His doctors warned him, "You have to stop playing." Baker's answer was instant, almost defiant. "If I stop playing, I die." We crate. That sentence wasn't bravado. It was prophecy. For Baker, drumming wasn't just art. It was the rhythm that kept his heart moving, literally and metaphorically. He'd beaten heroin 29 times by his own count, survived overdoses, crashes, and emotional wars. Yet the one thing he couldn't quit was rhythm itself. Every beat had been a form of therapy and self-destruction. In the early 2000s, Baker lived like a ghost of his own legend. He moved restlessly between England and South Africa, his body weakening but his temper undimmed. He spent his savings on horses, polo matches, and medical treatments that rarely worked. His studio dreams had long vanished, but he clung to small pleasures: a cigarette at dawn, a memory of Lagos, the sound of African drums carried on the wind. Fans wrote to him, calling him a genius. He'd respond with sarcasm or silence. He didn't believe in myths, not even his own. The years carved him down. His skin thinned, his hair faded from fire red to silver. Yet there was still something frightening in his stare. The intensity that once terrified bandmates never truly left. His interviews became confessionals laced with venom. "People call me a legend," he spat in one. "That's another word for someone who's finished." When journalists asked about his legacy, he laughed. "I don't have one. I was just the best drummer that ever lived." And nobody noticed. We had a Neverdation who grossed. The bitterness masked something deeper. Fear. He'd outlived nearly everyone who had defined his life. Jack Bruce, Phil Seaman, even some of his children's friends. Loneliness had become his final addiction. "I've lost everything many times," he said. "But the worst loss is when there's no one left to lose." We had a Neverdation who grossed. In 2013, the world caught one last glimpse of his fire through the documentary Beware of Mr. Doc. Baker. It was meant to be a portrait of a genius. Instead, it became a study in rage and survival. The film opened with him smashing a metal cane across the director's face. Blood everywhere. And then smiling, as if proud of his legend. But the deeper the documentary went, the more it revealed a man trapped between brilliance and ruin. He talked about Africa with tears in his eyes, about his father's death with the bitterness of a boy who never healed. The world saw not just the monster, but the man behind it. After the film, Baker retreated once again to South Africa. There, far from the cities that once worshipped him, he began his slow descent. In 2016, he wrote a haunting entry on his personal blog. "Just seen, doctor. Big shock. No more gigs for this old drummer. Of all things, I never thought it would be my heart." We had a Neverdation who grossed. Doctors had discovered that his heart's main artery was nearly blocked. He underwent a cardiac catheterization, the procedure running from wrist to heart. When asked if he was scared, he replied, "No. I've done worse to myself." We had a Neverdation who grossed. The surgery saved him temporarily, but left him frail. He could no longer tour, and the thing he feared most, stillness, became his daily reality. "Silence kills me," he said. But silence was all that remained. Those who visited him in his final years described two gingers, one bitter, profane, untamed, another oddly serene, reminiscing about Fela Kuti, about the desert, about horses. His daughter, Nettie, once said, "He was impossible to love, but impossible to forget." That paradox was his essence. Everyone who got close to Ginger Baker left with scars, but also with awe. He spent his last months confined to a hospital bed in Kent, surrounded by fading photographs. Him with Cream in '67, him with Fela Kuti in Lagos, him in his polo gear smiling through cracked teeth. The past had become his only company. When nurses asked about pain, he waved them off. "Pain?" he muttered. "I've been in pain since I was 4 years old." And he'd be to says, I am. The final collapse came in October 2019. At age 80, Ginger Baker, the man who had outlived his addictions, his enemies, and his generation's excess, slipped into a coma. He died days later. No grand finale, no encore, just silence. The one sound he had spent his life trying to drown out. News outlets around the world called him the world's first rock star drummer, a genius of rhythm, a man impossible to work with. But those words barely touched the truth. Baker's death was less an ending than an echo. The final beat in a song that began with a boy staring at the ruins of post-war London. His funeral was quiet. A few friends, some family, no spectacle. Yet even in death, controversy lingered. Tabloids whispered about financial disputes, about feuds between ex-wives, about the fragments of an empire that had long since fallen. But perhaps that was fitting. Ginger Baker was never meant for peace. His life had been a crescendo. Beautiful, violent, unfinished. And yet, when you listen closely, his legacy hums through every modern drumline. From rock to jazz to Afrobeat. His sense of rhythm reshaped what percussion could be, not just the heartbeat of music, but its voice. Musicians like Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, and Chad Smith have all cited Baker as the man who proved drumming could be both art and anarchy. In the end, Baker's tragedy wasn't that he destroyed others. It was that he couldn't save himself. His genius demanded too much. His body was the instrument, his heart, the casualty. He lived fast, raged hard, and spent 80 years proving that immortality doesn't always mean peace. There's an eerie irony to it all. The man who played louder than anyone died quietly. No thunder, no spotlight. Just the faint rhythm of a heart finally at rest. For some, that silence was the true music he'd been chasing all along. This is the tragic truth of Ginger Baker. The man who tried to outplay fate and nearly did. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries.